Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour. Welcome back to the Debussy Theatre. How are we? Great. I'm glad you're having a fantastic day. We've got so many talks to explore this week, so please do download the festival app to keep track of it all. Right, our next seminar, it's an exploration of when AI challenges and champions human creativity. And we're going to be hearing in a moment from the Chief Technology Officer of OpenAI, Mira Murati, and the Chief Executive Officer of Accenture Song, David Droga. We're going to start with a short film.
Hi.
Wow, we made it another year. Mira, this is your first Cannes. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
She's a bit overwhelmed with the amount of things going on in Cannes. It's people like myself. This is my 25th time, so I'm sort of an old, seasoned dog. So she's here to take notes and to listen and to learn, and also to spread some wisdom. Thank you for coming. Very happy to be here. There's two major topics that are influencing the world right now, and one is going to change almost everything we know, AI, and the other is Taylor Swift, and that's going to change everything in my teenage daughter's bedroom. But I have no expertise in Taylor Swift. You probably do, more than me.
Not that much.
But AI, and as you saw even in the video, which your team created, welcome, here we are.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
There's going to be so many conversations this week
Yeah.
about AI, and a lot of it is going to be based on speculation or arm's length knowledge. And you are at the center, like as far as being the anchor nacho. If anyone does anyone know what an anchor nacho is? It's the nacho chip that's connected to every other chip in your nacho. Well, Mira is that anchor nacho. So all the questions and all the knowledge and foresight, we're privileged to have you here, and obviously you can't tell us stuff that you can't tell us. But let me start by, I'm going to tell a story you told me when we first met. So I had the privilege to meet Mira last year, and we were talking, and I was very excited to meet one of the biggest brains in the industry, and wanted to talk to her about ChatGPT, and I'm always dumb things down, so I always want to know not just what you're doing at work, but what it means in your life. And I asked Mira how she explained it to her family, and the first time you showed your mother ChatGPT, because we're all having to explain this sort of. Can you tell the story that you told me about showing your mother?
Yeah, so it was pretty hard to explain what I did to my parents before we put out ChatGPT. And when we put out ChatGPT in November 2022, my mom lives in Italy, so my sister was showing her ChatGPT and said, okay, here is how you use it. You just write to it. And, she could do it in Albanian. So she started asking it questions, trying to get a sense for what it can do. And as she's talking with it, she said, well, can I just ask anything? And my sister said, yes, just ask anything. And then she typed, when will Mira get married? And my sister was like, well, Mom, it's not magic. It's still artificial intelligence. But, she was having such a natural interaction with it that she thought she could ask anything.
I love that story so much because when you told me that, it made me realize, obviously the impact and the sort of the momentum of what's happening that you're leading. There's still two truths in that A, no matter what's happening with AI and technology, it can't stop the human wanting to know what it wants to know or do what it wants. And there's nothing more important. Your mother has many things on, but her first most important thing is she wants to know when you're getting married. And the second thing I took out of it is, and technology can't answer everything because it has no idea, you know what I mean? And so for me, that was a delicious counterbalance to sort of what's going on with the enthusiasm and the excitement. And obviously it's been a huge couple of years between, not just with DALL-E and ChatGPT and ChatGPT 4.0 and Sora, which you launched recently, which that video, which was quite amazing that you can do that. How many people worked on that? Do you know how many people?
Our team is fairly small. We try to keep our research teams very focused and small. And so it's, you know, a handful of people that work on the main project, and it actually takes a broader team to bring it all together and figure out how to bring the technology into the real world. So Sora was research preview, and what we saw was, you know, still the research preview creation. But right now we're in the process of working with creatives and artists and filmmakers to figure out how can we use this technology to elevate creators, and how do we bring it into the world in a way that is safe and useful and helpful. And that takes a big group of people inside of OpenAI, but more importantly, a big group of people outside of OpenAI and partnering with people.
No, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I will say, for full transparency, I've been asked to be one of the lucky people to be able to be a creator on Sora, which is interesting because at first your team looked at my title as David Droga, CEO of Accenture Song, and they're like, this corporate guy's not allowed to be on the Sora. Then I had to, so I couldn't even get it to my office email. I had to get it as David Droga, the creative. So I'm trying to separate the two. So this is as much a sanity thing for me as well.
Yeah, it's, you know, before we bring it to businesses, we're still in the stage of discovery with creators and artists. So
I think one of the things that I imagine the majority of the people in this room as creators or adjacent to creators, and, you know, we all sort of are at the center, and there's a creative festival. You know, all of us are probably caught between excitement and enthusiasm and a little bit of terror and nerves, and a lot of us are worried in the industry. I see it very much even from my vantage point, that it's going to devour so much of our industry and the creative. And I'm just curious from your perspective, like what do you think of as creativity when you think about that from a technologist's point of view?
Yeah, when I think of creativity, I think of sort of this process of discovery, whether it's, you know, intellectual, scientific pursuits, or you know, doing something like a film, or arts, crafts, originality, individuality, something unique, and it can be, you know, any human experience, and I think, you know, it's a subjective sense then, whether someone likes it or not. But creativity per se, I see that as a pursuit of discovery into individuality and originality.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. And we were even talking about the video you did before. You were saying at the moment, which is the phase with a lot of creative tools, is that the first people who get to play with it are technologists. And then once that becomes common practice, and then we insert the creative people, that's when you can see what you can do. A lot like we were talking earlier about, that's what happened with photography. You know, originally that was pioneered by chemists, and to actually, you know, do the black and, you know, the basics of photography, you had to be a chemist more than a creator. And then when that became normal, and the chemists didn't have to be at the forefront, then the storytellers and the creators and the makers sort of came in and took it to different dimensions.
Yeah, and as the tools become more available and more democratized, then a broader set of people can actually access them and use them intuitively, and doesn't require, understanding the technology in depth to build the intuition for how it behaves in order to do something with it. The technology sort of comes to you. And I think that's what was unique with ChatGPT. Like, the underlying technology had been available for a while, but then you make it available in this interface that's more intuitive and more accessible and easy to use. And all of a sudden, so many people out there can get a sense for what it can do and what it cannot do.
Yeah, it does feel, again, I think it's how it's different. I'm seeing it show up because obviously, we're all talk to our clients, and every client is excited by it because they think they can, outdo their competitors or move at a different pace or find efficiencies. They're also paranoid that they're going to be, their competition's going to wipe them out because of that. But there's no question, again, from someone who comes from a background of creative industry, I look at departments that I sort of grew up in, I can see that's going to change that immensely. There's a lot of the roles that we have in agencies and design businesses, the need to have the staffing the same way is going to disappear. And it's funny because people always want me, I should caveat this, by the way, saying, while I'm excited and optimistic about AI and where we are at this stage, I'm not blind to the fact that I'm still anxious and nervous about what's going to happen with that and responsible AI and what's going to happen to our industries, but we can talk about that later. But definitely it's going to modify how we do things, and it's a tool that's already reached, it sort of starts by being in everyday lives already. As a lot of times things are injected, they sort of start enterprise down, and this is already in the hands of our kids and people, so it's becoming much more mainstream already.
Yeah, it's amazing, actually, that, we've had these technologies not for very long. These powerful large language models, it's just been, a couple of years since they entered the public sphere. The research sort of jumped into the public sphere through products, APIs, or, products like ChatGPT. And it's amazing what the trajectory of this technology looks like right now, where things are progressing really, really fast, but they're also coming to the public at a pretty fast speed and very broadly. So it's not just in the hands of very few, which is what typically happens when you have a new technology.
Yeah. It's fascinating, though, because the creative side of things isn't really emerging as much in our industry yet, because of obviously there's still copyright and trademark and all that sort of stuff. But I'm seeing majority, there's a huge amount of this within our company. A lot of clients, because of the scale of Accenture and Song, but majority of it, this early stage, when they talk about Gen AI and such, is very much about sort of efficiencies and productivity, which is the low-hanging fruit. Necessary, and to be competitive, you have to have that. But I do see, which is the sort of the thing that scares me, is a lot of clients who haven't really grasped the future of it. Just look at it for, I'll never have to pay a copywriter again, or I'll never have to pay a photographer again, and that's where, again, that's not your problem. That's our job as creators, is to sort of find the counterbalance between what is still worth paying for and relevant. And I still advocate that the very best of what we represent, there's never been a more important time for it and for a premium for it, because when everyone has access to this, it's going to sort of bring best practices to everybody.
Right.
But then when everybody is doing best practices, nobody is doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think in some way it is a shared responsibility when we talk about, whose problem it is. It is our problem, it is your problem. It's kind of everyone's problem in figuring out how the technology comes into the real world, because the technology per se, it's incredibly capable, but the way that we use it could be amazing, and it could make a lot of things great for us, or, it could be harmful, or deceptive, or, many other things. And so the way that we design it, develop it, bring it into the world really matters. It's not a predetermined outcome. And so even when we think about job displacement, or when we think about how it's going to elevate certain skills, roles, I think that's quite dependent in how we shape the technology. And the way that we shape it, it's then going to shape our society. I don't see it as a predetermined outcome.
Well, I think the thing is, again, the job displacement thing, sounds weird to say this, it sounds callous. I'm not scared of the job displacement thing. I feel like the skill set is going to still be relevant, just it's going to manifest itself in different places, because I think, in my career, which is, 25, 30 years in this industry, even just the journey, I've seen it from where we had to hire storyboard artists, or we had to, just all the different types of things that we had to progress, and you'd lose departments, or how typography was done. Like, there's always been this evolution, and departments have always changed, but the necessity for us to create things that connect and are meaningful, like, that's never gone out of style. And I said recently in a talk somewhere else, I was saying, I think the thing is, people want to be black and white about this. And my thing is, not all creativity is worth saving. That sounds like a crazy thing to say as a creative person. But we were talking about this at lunch. Like, a lot of things that are deemed creative, like let's use advertising as an example, the majority of advertising is not creative. It's written by something far more dangerous than AI, which is research. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's so many things that we deem as creative. Film, television, advertising, design, music, that are formulaic already. You know what I mean? And a lot of times what the tools that you're creating might actually do at a bare minimum, they'll get rid of the mediocre, messy middle, but they're never going to eradicate the top, where, creativity for its originality and its nuance.
Think depending on how we develop and deploy these tools into the world, it can really expand our definition, our concept of creativity, and in ways that we can't even imagine right now, because we're caught up doing other things. And if we can get help on these other things, like, perhaps doing research, brainstorming, iterating faster, then there is more space for us to think more in depth, and without the constant distractions or instantaneous feedback, to do better creative work.
What makes you nervous?
Well, a lot of things, but I would say at the top of it is really the risk of misunderstanding the technology. I think the technology in itself is not enough in order for it to be helpful and useful to society. I think everything else around it, figuring out how you partner successfully with creators, with policymakers, with educators, to understand early impact and forecast impact in different fields, and prepare society in positive ways for what's to come, and also having guardrails and mitigating misuse and harmful uses of the technology. But that actually requires that people understand the technology. And I think so far, AI has been sort of impenetrable in understanding what it means, the capabilities, the risks, and so on. Only in the past, couple of years, people have a more intuitive sense for what it can do by being able to use it. And so making it accessible, making it easy, free to use is key, and bringing it to anyone that has internet access. I
mean, I think that's the beautiful side of what's happening in this revolution, is the democratization of it. As you said, that suddenly there are people, all walks of life, that have access to things, and you can get things out, ideas and expressions out of your head faster, and iterate and learn, which is amazing. Again, the flip of that is, again, with all things, by the way, it's the bad actors that also, because particularly there's a lot of elections going on, not just the one in America pending, and again, it's sort of how we make sure that that's not, technology. Well, there'll always be people who try, but how we can sort of work around to mitigate that, it's going to be.
Yeah, it takes a lot of hard work, and also figuring out iteratively what the real world uses are and how to deal with misuse. You can't just do that in the lab, in a vacuum. It really takes, this friction with the real world to understand where the technology can push certain use cases and domains, and where it can create a lot of issues. Like, for example, this year is a global election year. And so we've been quite worried about misinformation, deepfakes, and we've been working to make the classifiers on DALL-E, for example, more robust, because we want to make sure that people can understand when, images are created by AI versus a person. And I mean, more broadly, you just want to understand where content is coming from. And so we've been working a lot on content provenance and including C2PA metadata in images so you can track them wherever they are, having robust classifiers to detect deepfakes. And we're also doing a lot of research in text. But these are all sorts of issues that, you can understand by partnering with people, seeing what's happening concretely, and building mitigations on use cases, testing them out, and then expanding beyond the use cases that you can handle to build more and more robust interventions.
Yeah, no, and have you had to bolster, I mean, obviously you've got a lot of people at OpenAI, have you had to even triple down on the amount of people working on the sort of responsibility side, particularly given the fact that there's elections coming up? Is that something that...
It's the way that the whole industry used to think about safety is that you build the technology and then somehow you figure out how to make it safe later.
Yes.
And it doesn't really work like that. You have to think about the safety from the beginning. When you first start training these models and when you start thinking about the data. Our approach at OpenAI is to really integrate safety at each step of the process, from the early research ideas and conception all the way to deploying the product and afterwards.
Yeah. I'm also, given the fact that, getting an audience with you is rare for everyone in the room, picking your brains, because as I said, they're very sought after brains. What advice would you give, I'd be curious, because to the people in the room professionally who are within industries representing brands, any advice to them about how to sort of embrace this wave that's coming? And then the second one, which is maybe an even more selfish one, is what advice would you give to the parents in the room to their kids? What should they study? What should they be doing?
I think probably it's the same advice for both, which is to really use the tools. Like right now, we have such an incredible tool set at our disposal, and it is free, it's easy to use. These tools are changing so rapidly as well, and so not to be scared to use them. They are new for everyone, and so it can be a bit intimidating at first, but just using them, implementing them in your workflow, whether it's day-to-day doing something or something professional, and just seeing where does it actually help and where does it hit roadblocks, what kinds of issues does it create. I think that's the best way to understand it, to actually use it.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing that as well. As I said, just testing out the Sora has been amazing to do that. You asked me when I was using it, and I sort of confessed. I said, I was in a really boring meeting the other day, and I wasn't having a speaking part, so I just took my camera off and I started doing something. I deny that, obviously. But actually, I had a real case example yesterday where it was Father's Day in America, and I flew out last night, so I landed this morning. And I had Father's Day with my 4 children, and it was also my wife's birthday. That's the reason I'm telling you this. And at our brunch, whatever we had, my kids started to play a song to me. I was so confused hearing this song because it started off with this sort of like Frank Sinatra, I love my parents type of thing, and then it was like saying about happy birthday, and then it segued into Father's Day. And I was like, how did you find this song? Like, who wrote a song about? And then it dawned on me that I'm an idiot. I'm like, oh my God, you just made it. And they're like, they made it half an hour before, and it was funny, and didn't make. But it was so interesting to see it through the eyes of that. Now, what was interesting about that is that made me laugh a lot, to just play with something and just see. And I think about it in the context of that's just the infant steps of something. But then separate to that was they each wrote me cards, handwritten cards. Again, there's a relevant reason I'm telling you this story. And although it's like chicken scratch and, you know, terrible grammar and blah, 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 I was crying reading my kids' cards because there's still something about sincerity and context. And I think one of my sons, my 19-year-old, I think he wrote it on a napkin from a deli that he had a sandwich. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but it just juxtaposed to me, there's a times for everything, right? There's room for understanding and humor and insight and emotion, and there's other times for, you know, and I think that's what's so fascinating about this revolution, because as a creative person, I've always been a greedy creative, even though I'm now pretending to be a CEO, where just any tool that allows us to try and do things, to take our thoughts and ambitions into different places, that's where it's kind of interesting. Because that's the thing, if we don't embrace it, it is just going to sweep us to the side until other people step up and influence. And that's why we want to get as many creative people testing and playing, and what we trial here is going to set in course the motion of what happens, because who knows where this festival will be, what will be showcased here. In fact, we did a little experiment using Sora. We gave it to a few creatives literally a couple of days ago. Caveat, right? Everything's going to be a caveat. And this goes back to democratizing things. So we found a random artist on Instagram, like a singer, who just sings in the busker, actually. And they just approached him and said, can they sit with him for an hour and create a music video for him from scratch? And they literally just finished it last night, just doing, and I'm going to show it, but it's, as I said, all the caveats that it's done on the fly, and it's no award winner, but it's as to show like people that never had a chance to play with things where they can express themselves. And if this is just, as I said, the tip of the spear. So I'm going to play this video, but it's just quite fun.
Ed, can you bring that tray down?
Hey man.
Hey buddy, how's it going?
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good.
So, what inspired you to do this?
We've just taken your lyrics and we're just playing with them because they're so visual. This one is pretty good.
Yeah man, on that corner, that looks like where I grew up kind of thing.
Yeah.
That bit is where I could do the hello sunshine, what do you know?
Let's try that.
Sick.
Yeah. Do you want to see the finished piece?
I'd love to, man.
All right,
I'd love to.
check this out.
Come rock and
Cause a fiver is a deep sea diver. 10, which down doesn't win. 20 is known as the score, but some people say apple core. 50, now that's the bullseye. If you lose one of them, well, you're bound to cry. And 100 is a 1 or raw ton. Add 2 to see that combination. Hair is your barnet and fair. Mince pies help you look and stare. North and south is where you speak from, and your Khyber pass is the place you speak from. Well, Red Flint is your chin, Mirror Peck is your neck. All in check, jumping up and down in your place. A meter to the magical mystical beat. But everywhere, everyone, feel the bass, feel the drum. Come rockin' with a two-ton, come rockin' with a two-ton. Hello sunshine, what do you know? As your father and as your old flow. Pie and mash, jelly deals, many grants, many feels. That's all part of the East End life. That's when you're living in a trouble and strife. Everywhere, everyone, feel the bass, feel the drum. Come rockin' with a two-ton, come rockin' with a two-ton.
Hey, oh my gosh.
What's your name?
I'm a sucker for Cockney stuff anyway, but it just makes me, again, this is infant steps. The creatives who did that with him, this is their first time using it, so they don't even understand the language and the nuances. You were saying that the people in the... But the more that we start to use this, not just Sora, but all these elements, and start to infuse it, that's where we're going to discover things that are, take us...
Yeah, and we can figure out how to bring them into the world in a useful way. We don't have to do it at all costs. We want to do it in ways that are actually useful and helpful. That was cool. I hadn't seen that before, actually. The last version of it. And you can kind of see, you know, how, I mean, parts of it are kind of absurd too, right? But you can sort of see the simulation of the physical reality and the detail in the scenes and the continuity of the characters and the complexity of it. That's very cool.
But that's the thing, again, we're at that, right, the early beginnings of it. And it's obviously, it's not all just going to be about images and moving images and still images and music and all. That's just sort of the creative expression side of things. As I said, there's so many layers to it. But I feel like that the thing that I talk to all my creatives about, who are, as I said earlier, you know, are slightly anxious about it. You know what I mean? Because, and I keep on saying that there's no scenario where if you don't open yourself up to learn, and also we've got to bet on ourselves and have the confidence, because eventually the clients are going to have to pay us to sort of what we add to it. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't replace the geniuses of what you are creating, but they're tools. And every tool has proven to be valuable to a certain degree, but then it's what humanity does with it. And as I said, we represent so many industries that have so many eyeballs, so much money, and it's still fueled by imagination. We still bring to the table intent and sincerity and these other things, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, you know, I think it's completely understandable that people have anxiety and fears around these tools because they are incredibly capable, and it's a different type of capability than what we used to. You know, as humans, we've always imagined some sort of extension to our capabilities, and usually it's been physical ability, right? And now we're doing something different, you know, extending our thinking and imagination and creativity, and that can feel quite intimidating. And I think it's normal that people feel anxiety, but the thing to remember is that, you know, we, at least, you know, on the developing side of this technology, it is important for us, for humans, to be in the driver's seat and have a full range of input and agency in how we actually develop and deploy this technology.
Do you believe that? Do you still believe that humans will be in the driving seat?
I think it's very important that we develop the technology in a way where we have control of how we use it, we steer it, and it's actually beneficial in the real world. And that's hard to achieve because, you know, we have far less capable tools today, and, you know, the advent of the internet or social media, of course, it has come with downsides, and a lot of downsides and sort of unexpected risks because of how we designed and deployed these products. And I think we have an opportunity to do this differently.
Yeah, well, we have to really. I mean, again, it's a non-negotiable thing because, as I said, it's the speed of which it's developing. We can't and ah or be on the sideline or be spectators, and I think that's the thing I'd say to any clients in the room or any creatives in the room. Get ahead of it, get into it. We're going to fall forward, sprint forward, but we have to sort of jump into that. And I'll ask you one last question, which is a big one, before we go, because I know time's up. Obviously, this development is moving at a pace, but the big question that everyone sort of talks about is the sort of the leap between that and you know, artificial general intelligence. When do we think that's the potential for that, where it can problem solve and be creative?
Yeah, so I think we will continue to evolve our definition of intelligence as we build more and more capable systems. And in fact, this has already been happening. And I do think we will have incredibly advanced AI systems within the next 5 years, definitely within the next decades. But I think it's also important to think about when these systems actually sort of penetrate society and the economic system, and when they're driving productivity and growth, and they're actually being useful. And I have uncertainty about that because, you know, it's one thing to develop the technology, and it's another thing to figure out how you build the entire engineering infrastructure, social infrastructure, to deploy it helpfully in the world.
Yeah, no, all I'm hoping is that our safety net for us as a species and thinkers and imagination is, as I said before, intention, empathy, taste, slightly naughtiness and irreverence. Like if we can embed those into these things as well, that can't be taught, that they just come from context and understanding. But it's an exciting, terrifying, wonderful future. And again, as a creative that's long in the tooth, I'm fascinated by it, throwing myself in the deep end, spending all my time telling my kids to sort of at least understand it, even if they want to ignore it, but not to be just critics on the sideline. But thank you very much. I could talk to you all day, actually. You're inside. But thank you very much. And I hope
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira.
From OpenAI, Mira Murati, Accenture Song, David Droga. Another round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen.